Good morning, friends. Thanks for stopping by Harvey Cat Homestead. This is Sam. I'm happy to see you. Hope you're having a great day. Today, I know I've got plenty of friends who are interested in entering into the realm of raising meat rabbits and being able to produce their own protein source on a smaller level. I would say rabbits are probably easier than chickens, just in the processing aspect. Granted, you're not going to get eggs, but you can harvest pelts depending on the breed you decide to go with. So you do still have more than one actual product that you are. Oh, and also the fertilizer, the poop. It's amazing. So in an effort to help you guys kind of get started, I'm going to show you today how to build an all-wire cage. This is a very simple build. I have zero metalwork, carpentry skills, whatever. I got no clue what I'm doing, but I mean, I say that. I had no clue what I was doing when I started. So if I can learn how to do this, I know you can too. Let me show you just a little bit about the cage that I'm going to show you exactly how to build today. This is designed specifically for housing a buck. This has 1/2 inch by 1 inch wire on the bottom. And then if you were doing this for a doe, you would want it to come up. You would want it at least 4 inches along the bottom, the lower rim of the cage as well, because if you are going to have a mama rabbit in this cage with babies, occasionally when they are born, they can actually fall through the wire, and that counts the edges as well if the wire is large enough. So you want to avoid that issue. This wire is 14 gauge all the way around. Actually, no, this is 16 gauge. This is 16 gauge all the way around. Ideally, you would have 14 gauge at least on the floor. 14 gauge is thicker than 16 gauge. And that's in order to protect their feet. 16 gauge is totally fine for a rabbit that is like more of a pet size rabbit, something like 5-6 pounds. 16 gauge is fine. Whenever you're dealing with a 10-pound plus rabbit, that's more weight and that's more pressure on their feet, and you can easily end up with sore hocks. I do use rests. I will show you one here in just a moment. And then this is 30 by 30. The rest protects their feet in an unideal situation, which, to be completely honest, this is unideal. In order to find 14 gauge 1/2 inch by 1 inch wire, you have to actually you have to special order it. You have to special order it from somewhere like Bass Wire Service. Like, that's the only thing they do is make wire and fencing type of stuff and send it to people. So this is 30 by 30. Again, I would not put a mama in a cage this size. I would rather have them have way more room. The bucks don't necessarily need as much space. I would not go smaller than this. That is just my personal opinion. And then this is a 24-inch height. So 30 by 30 square around the bottom, and then 24 inches tall. I like to give them height. A lot of people will only do an 18-inch height. I prefer to give them the opportunity to stretch. I just feel like that's better on their back. It's just better for them all around. And I will tell you, a lot of people are like, oh, wait, why do you care if it's better? Because you're already putting them in this little box. This is a lot safer and cleaner than other options for rabbits. Domesticated rabbits have been bred to live in cages like this for 500 years. I promise you, they are fine. I do occasionally give my breeders the opportunity to run around my garden in a place, specifically my raised beds, because I know other rabbits cannot get up there. Only the tall ones. So that gives them the opportunity to get a little bit of dirt under their feet and to run around and enjoy themselves. And so they're not 100% of the time in a cage like this, but they seem to be perfectly happy, and as I've told you guys many times, I try to give my rabbits the best life that I possibly can while they are here, but at the same time, they are livestock. So they're not pets, they're livestock. That's just a different kind of mindset. That does not mean you need to abuse them. That just means, you know, you have a little bit different priorities. I don't treat my dog Dixie like livestock. She sleeps in my bed with me. If I had a pet rabbit, it would have a very different life inside my house. But back to the cage. So this is, as I said, 1 inch by 1 inch up top, and then 1/2 inch by 1 inch on the bottom for the floor. And then this door, I didn't buy a hinge. I didn't do anything like that. You can just kind of make a hinge yourself. And all these things I got on Amazon. I will link all of these items. And this is just a very simple door. I like to make my door large enough for me to actually fit inside of. I do not, some people will purchase like a lip to go over the edge of this, because if you cut it, it is sharp. I will tell you, the edges are sharp. But instead of doing that, I opt for using a tool to grind the edges of the wire so that they are no longer sharp. And with those little hooks on their little springs, they just latch in. Very simple, very easy. And the only other thing I've not mentioned are I've used hog rings and J-clips to actually attach the wire. So now what I'm going to do is give you a closer look at the tools that we are going to be using and the equipment. And again, I will link all of this in the description below so you can get started on your own. So I'm going to move over and show you the tools we are going to be working with. Okay, so we are going to be doing all of this work on my front porch. I really like to have concrete. I feel like that's just easier to work with whenever you're dealing with big rolls of wire like this. You can literally just plop it down and push it around, and you don't have to worry about it scraping up anything, and you're not going to get all wet working in the grass or all itchy. So if you have a concrete surface to work on, that is, or I mean, you could do it in gravel. If you have a gravel driveway, that works fine as well. It is helpful to have a few weights, something to place on top of the wire as you are unrolling it, because as you get to the center of a roll like this, it's going to be very tight. It takes a little bit of effort to actually get it to flatten out. And I will tell you, it doesn't necessarily always actually flatten out. Whenever you're working with something with a bow, you want the bow facing up so that it's not facing down. Well, I guess the bow, you want it going like this, if that makes sense. You don't want it going like this, because you don't want it, because your rabbit's going to be sitting up there and it will sag eventually, and it can pull the cage apart. These cages will be hanging. I will not be placing them on a frame where the base is actually on wood like my other cages are, because I've just run into problems in terms of being able to keep it clean. So with that bow, I guess think about like a bow, like a recurve bow. The bow is facing up. So that's an aside. Anyway, so I want to start by showing you all my tools. Obviously, we have our wire. This is our 1x1 14 gauge welded wire. It's galvanized. If you purchase it from Bass, you can actually buy it where it is galvanized after it is welded together, and that is much stronger and it will last a lot longer, but it is also fairly more expensive. So that's our 1x1. Again, I got this on Amazon. That's for the sides and the roof of the cage. And then over here we have, this is our baby saver wire. This actually came from Tractor Supply. You can get it online as well. This, obviously, as I've said, this is 1 inch by 1/2 inch mesh. This says it's 16 gauge on here. It's just, what length is this? I'm not exactly sure what the length, 10 feet. So this is 30 inches, which works really, when I say 30 inches, it is 30 inches across this way. You can cut it to whatever length you want. For me, it's easier, it's more simple to just do a square cage. I don't like having to piece the flooring together. If I'm going to piece anything together, I would rather it be the roof. What I mean by that is I don't want to have two lengths of this under their feet. I'd rather have one full length so that it is more secure. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so there's our wire. And I will go ahead and talk about rest just a little bit. So this is a rest. It has these clips on it so that it actually can clip down into I wouldn't put this in there. This hasn't been cleaned. This is out of one of my rabbit cages. So it actually sticks and stays into a specific location wherever you're actually putting it in the bottom of the cage, and this helps protect their feet. This is just a nice, as you can see, it's a lot softer, it's a lot smoother. It's just more pleasant than sitting on the actual wire. So I do not have a rabbit in a cage that does not have at least one rest in that cage. This just offers them more comfort, and we want our bunnies happy. So that's the wire. Now let's get into actually working with the wire. So we're going to start with our tools now. This is what I have been using to actually cut my wire with. My lovely husband purchased this from a tool truck at work. It's actually Mac Tools. Getting spoiled over here. This thing cuts like butter. Prior to having this specific tool, I used just needle nose pliers, and you can use needle nose pliers. You can also use an angle grinder to just go through and cut really quickly. I don't own an angle grinder. I did not have the funds to purchase another tool on top of purchasing all of this wire. So if you've already got one, that's excellent. There's like a cutting wheel that you can purchase and use as an attachment specifically to cut through. And if you're cutting a lot at one time, it's very, very helpful. The less work you have to put in with your wrists, especially me, I have puny wrists, all kinds of problems. Anyway, I will warn you, if you spend all day doing this, you may not be able to grip very well the next day, but neither here nor there. So these I actually, as I'm cutting it, I roll it out and I just cut through one wire at a time. There obviously, as I've said, there are faster ways to do that. I like the control that this offers, even in spite of me not having the funds to purchase something that is a little bit more feisty. So that's for cutting. And again, you could use needle nose pliers if you don't have these wire snips. So that is what we use to cut. Now for attaching, I have both hog rings. A hog ring is this little guy. I can't realize it's literally just like a little loop, just a little metal loop. And I've got just hog ring applicators. There's a kind that you use for fencing. The fencing kind will not work for this application. The fencing kind does not allow you to really tighten down on the actual ring. So this is how you put it in there. You actually, you position this piece around the two wires that you are trying to attach. You do it at a corner because that will create the most strength. And then you just cinch down and twist as you go. I will show you that directly in a moment. So I like to use hog rings around the edges of the cage. And then for the floor of the cage, especially if I am making a larger cage and I'm having to piece together multiple pieces of this 1/2 inch by 1 inch wire, I like to use J-clips. J-clips they call it J-clips because it looks like a little J, and it's thicker. It's not just like one wire, it's like a plate. And then you have your J-clip applicator tool. You place the J-clip. I keep dropping this thing. Sorry guys. You place the J-clip in there, you kind of hold it, and then same basic principle, except this you don't do in corners, this you do on flats. So if you really want to make something very, very tight in terms of this 1/2 inch by 1 inch wire, this is like it's close enough to 1/2 inch where it fits really well in the more narrow section. And then if you wanted to really tighten up the larger section, you would just use 2 of these. And again, I will show you exactly how to use this tool in a moment. And then aside from that, okay, let me go ahead with this. If you have a J-clip and you misplace your J-clip, you are going to need an awl and a hammer to remove said J-clip. So you kind of cinch your awl in where it's been tightened down, and you hammer your awl as deep into that as you can and kind of pull back, and that will loosen your J-clip so that you can remove it. And if there's any reason you need to remove a hog ring, you just come back to your wire snips and they work great for that. The needle nose pliers cannot adequately remove one. I guess you could use it and twist it off, but it can't cut, just because it literally, the cutting portion of the tool cannot get close enough to the ring itself to cut it. So wire snips are great for that. And it's very likely you will make a mistake and need to go back and repair things. And that's fine. That's the cool thing about working with wire like this, is it's pretty forgiving. Even popping welds and stuff like that, that's very, very easy to do with this wire. I would try to recommend not avoiding, that was a lot of double negatives. I would recommend trying to avoid bending this terribly tightly. The more you bend it, the more likely it is that your welds between the wires going crossways and up and down are going to pop, and it literally separates the wires, so you don't want that. And then the last tool I have, this isn't a tool. This is your little closing mechanism, and it's just like a hook with a little handle for your finger on a spring. And you use a hog ring to attach this end into the wire on the door. I guess you could do it the other way as well. You could attach this end to the cage itself and then put the hook on the door. But I like having it on the door so I don't have the strength to hold this in place. This is very strong. Now, all the stuff I got on Amazon, I don't remember exactly what these are called, but I will place this in all the information below. The only other item that you will need, it's not only, sorry. So let me talk about corners. You can just bend this. What I do in order to bend it at the corners for the walls, in order to make the cube portion, like the actual sides, what I do is I measure 30 inches. Well, obviously you need to know the dimensions of your cage before you do any bending. So I go ahead and measure 30 inches because I'm making 30 inches square today. I place this guy on the wire where I'm going to bend it, and then I pull it up, and then against each wire, I just tap, like I hold this in place with my foot because it will slide if you're not careful. And then I just tap the wire against the wood with a hammer, and it creates a nice 90-degree bend. It's not perfect, but it is close enough, and it works quite well on fly. If you would rather go ahead and cut all four sides out, that is fine. That's just me trying to preserve my hog rings because I only have so many. So if you have a plethora, or if you have a good variety of hog rings, feel free to go ahead and cut everything. I'm also trying to save my wrists because the more I have to cinch down the hog rings, the less functionality I have in my wrist the next day. So that is that. And then the only other thing, as I told you just a second ago, I don't use the actual plastic pieces around the cage door. I use my little Dremel tool. You could use an angle iron as well for this. Angle iron. Is that right? Angle grinder. So this piece right here is designed specifically to deburr. Like, this is a grinder specifically for metal. If you do not use the right attachment on here, it can catch on fire. Please be careful. Please wear protective equipment when you're using any kind of equipment like this, because this spins very, very quickly. Do not touch it. It gets very, very hot. It will remove your skin. It will fling things into your eyes, onto your flesh. So please be careful using this tool. There are actual little, if you'd rather not do this, there are plastic clips that you can purchase and put around the edges of your door so that your wire is not catching and tearing your clothes or scratching you, because when you cut it, it is very sharp. That is one pro of using an angle grinder instead of, an angle grinder instead of the snips, because you automatically get that smoother finish. But that is, I believe that's all of our tools. And we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how to cut these pieces.
Okay, so definitely wear the right shoes for this. I'm going to start with our 1/2 inch by 1 inch wire and just unroll it and get it trimmed out. Whenever you're working with this kind of wire, you want to make sure, you want to be careful as you're removing it from its tightly rolled condition. I've just trimmed these off. You can also use needle nose pliers and bend those wires that are holding it into the roll. And then you just want to gently unroll it. At this point, I realize there is a hole in the wire that's missing, so that's not great. So I'm just going to measure 30 by 30, 30 inches by 30 inches, no big deal. And you want to make sure that you are going wire to wire vertically. Now, here I'm going to show you a close-up of the missing wire. Not that important. Tractor Supply did actually allow me to return that item and exchange it. So we're just trimming our floor 30 by 30 inches. You don't necessarily need every little bit of this information, because in terms of it's a tedious process in terms of trimming it. But again, if you use the different tool, it would be quicker. So here I am trying to get the bow out of the floor. There's nothing wrong with having a bit of a bow. It's kind of impossible to get it perfect. Whenever you're building your cage, just be sure that that bow is facing upward. But that is that for the floor. And now we are going to move on to our 1 by 1 wire and unroll a full 120 inches of this. And we're going to trim it at that. Okay, I forgot to mention, I've grabbed like a 20-pound and a 15-pound weight, a couple of 15-pound weights, and they are holding the wire down, because if you're not careful, it will fling up on you, and you don't want those wires just smacking into you, because it's pretty painful. Just, I don't want you guys getting all cut up. There's no need in it. It's pretty easy to avoid just by weighting everything down. All right, so now we're going to begin the bending of our cage process. So measure 30 inches or whatever dimension it is that you're working with, and carefully place your wood up against your wire, and you just use the hammer and tap in order to create a 90-degree bend, or at least as close to 90 degrees as you can get. It's not exactly 100% perfect with this method, but it's close enough. So we're going to do this at the 3 remaining corners, and just be careful as you're doing this, because it's very easy for that wood to slide, which is why, I'm regularly making sure that it's in place and just going over it. Okay, so moving angles. Okay, this is our last one. I've done it from the other side just because whenever you're rolling the cage up, it's pretty difficult to work with, because you have a bunch of wire on top of you. So at this point, we're working from the other end, and it's the same basic process, just tapping against the wood to get that 90-degree bend, close enough to 90 degrees. And so now we have our square. Okay, now we are going to move on to trimming the roof. Because this is a 24-inch roll, you're going to need to kind of piecemeal it. So this is the 130 by 24 that I've got, and now I'm trimming out a second piece. The remainder of this, so I just went ahead and went with cutting 30 inches, and I'm going to count in 6 squares. You don't necessarily want to use counting your squares for all of your measurements, but in this case it worked. So this piece that we are getting right now is 6 by 30, and that's going to complete our roof. And now we are going to move on to the door. Whenever you're trimming out the door, you want to make sure that you are leaving the extra loose wires on the end, because they are going to be your hinges. So that's our door that we're doing is going to be 19 by 16 inches. So That's exactly what I trim out. It's 19 inches wide, 16 inches tall.
All right, now that all of these pieces are cut, I'm going to get everything cleaned up and situated out here, and I will meet you inside, and we will work on getting this pieced together in a nice climate-controlled environment. Okay, so it's been a little bit longer than what I told you it would be. This is later in the evening, afternoon. So I have brought all of our pieces inside. This is our main body of our cage. So this other side over here, I have tacked into place. I basically just, I'm going to scoot this over. I'm essentially just going to turn this around because you need to see this part. All right, this right here. There is one hog ring here, and there is one hog ring right here. So basically, I've just tacked that into place so that it's loosely held together so that I could move it. And I'm going to now show you how you begin the actual construction now that we have all of our bare bones together. And I am going to start by fully attaching this corner to itself. All right, I like to put our hog rings in a little bowl because it's easy to grab onto. And let me see if I can't get you a bit closer to the action. There you go, nice and low. All right, and as I told you earlier, we are aiming to get the corners. So what I like to do, you put your hog ring in your tool before you begin, and you make sure everything is lined up properly. And then you position your hog ring around both wires, and then you just squish it into place. And now we have our hog ring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down this whole thing, and then we will move on to putting the floor and the ceiling up. All right, so let me show you what I've done here. This is, you don't necessarily have to do it as intensely as I have, but I have placed a hog ring at every single spot up until about 6 inches down. And then I've done every other one. And then on this other end down here, I've done every single one as well. The strongest bond that you can create here is if you place your hog ring between two joints that are farther apart. So this is still actually quite loose. I can grab our J-clip applicator here and press these a bit tighter. This is tricky because you don't want to bend the wire of the cage itself. You just want to make sure that you are bending the hog ring. And I will typically go through and tighten every single one of these. If you bend things just a bit, it's not really the end of the world, but if you can avoid it, that is preferable. See, I just bent that guy right there. But in general, it's not going to make a huge difference, but this being so much tighter that it cannot move at all, that's what we want. We want as much stability in this cage as possible because it is going to be hanging. If it was just sitting on a wooden frame or something like that, it wouldn't necessarily be as important for it to be as tight as what I am making it right now, but I am going overboard very intentionally. Yeah, see that just, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get your tool in the appropriate location to actually tighten the ring instead of bending the wire. But you're not going to get every single one of these perfect, so don't expect perfection. It's okay for things to not be 100% perfect.
Your rabbits won't care as long as they're not dealing with very sharp edges or dealing with falling through or escaping. Those are the things that you really, really want to avoid. So strength and stability are more important than aesthetics whenever you're talking about cage building. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten all of these and then we'll move on. One thing I will tell you is moving through this process is if you've done what I've done and left these corners connected, well, even if you haven't actually, if at any point you're realizing things are not matching up well, all you have to do is come in and trim all the way down. And if you need to add more, you can do that. You can piece it together if you need to, or you could trim out more very easily. So let me grab our ceiling. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start, well, I'm just going to sit it down. So this is, if you remember, our ceiling is piecemealed because of the length of our cage wire. So I'm going to put one in place completely using the same exact method in terms of the corners and the hog rings. And then at the corners, what I will do is I will add a J-clip next to each one because you can't really get the corner because it's 3 pieces. Anyway, I'll show you what I mean. So this is bowed this way. I'm not sure how well you can see that from over there, but this, as I said, we want the bow facing up in order to strengthen what we were working on. And I'm going to be a bum and I'm going to sit on my couch as I do this because if you have the opportunity to be comfortable, I believe you should go for it. And again, as we work this, we're going to be kind of cinching out some of the bends from the metal. Okay, so at this point, this is not 100% stable. I've just kind of tacked it in place. Again, because this is going to be hanging and it will be attached to the roof portion, I am going to be very intentional about getting this very stable. So the previous build, I did essentially every other corner in terms of attaching it. But again, I'm just kind of trying to piece things tack things into place so that then I can come back and stabilize, because if I need to make any changes, if I have a whole lot of things 100% stable, it's going to be a problem. But I will know very quickly if everything is properly lined up when I get this guy in place. And what I do with this is I tack the cage, the outer portion of the cage to it first before attaching the remainder of the ceiling. So we will go ahead and get started with that. Okay, so at this point, I can now connect these two different portions here. I'm not sure how well you can see. Wow, I'm really bad at pointing cameras. Here, So this is still unattached, but it will no longer be once we have placed the next few hog rings. Okay, so now at this point, I'm not going to need to put any more of these guys in. I am going to go back and stabilize these and, add just a few more in the actual edge of the cage. But let me go ahead and show you how I installed J-clips for stabilizing the corners specifically. Okay, I'm going to bring you in nice and close here. All right, we're going to try it this way. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So again, we place our J-clip in the tool. I find it easier to use with the J portion upside down, so to speak. And then you go in and you make sure that it is over top of both wires and you pinch. And I really want these very, very tight, and so I kind of come back in and just really pinch from different directions and get it tightened down. And I do that on both sides here of each corner. It's not the best angle. Some of this is just really just fighting angles. But there we are. There's that. So you can very easily pick up on the cage and wiggle it around, and it's nice and stable. So we are in good shape in terms of the top. I'm going to go around and restabilize, add additional stabilization to the corners and to the edges. Basically, I'm going to do every other or every third. I'm not going to show you that because you're probably already tired of watching me put these little things in. Okay, so I have stabilized the ever-living crap out of this thing. So I could pick it up and sling it around and do all kinds of craziness to it. Granted, some people who have already, are more experienced than me may say this is a bit overkill. Again, I would much rather have it far too stable than not stable enough. So now we are going to go ahead and flip this guy over, and we are going to start on the floor. Gosh. Yeah, make sure you're putting a blanket down if you're working on this inside of your house, because you can really damage your floor. All right. And here, again, we need to be sure that the bow is facing, in this case, because it's turned upside down, is facing down. And we will once again kind of tack it in place and then come back and stabilize everything. I will tell you, I'm not going to use hog rings in this. I'm going to use J-clips just because I prefer having J-clips along the floor. I might use a couple of hog rings just in the corners or something, but when I say corners, I don't mean the actual corner, I mean one back, because there's not really a good way to stabilize this to this. You need more width between your 2 points. So let's go ahead and start tacking these in. Okay, I have the corners tucked in place. Obviously, you saw that snafu with it falling, and it did bend. My foolishness did bend this thing a bit more. So before I start tacking a little anymore, try to bend that up a little bit. I'm not going to do any good with that. Okay, so when you're doing J-clips on the floor, honestly, when you're doing any part of this, the best thing to do is start on one side and move straight through to the other, just so that you're not missing anything. J-clips are a little harder to remove if you do make a mistake,
with them, whereas the hog rings you can just snip with the actual metal snips. That's very easy to do. Removing these with the awl and the hammer is a little more difficult, and it can cause more damage on your actual product in terms of bending wires. But I'm just going to go through and start on one end and go all the way around, adding these J-clips. And if I don't make an actual mistake, I will show you using a fake mistake or something how to actually remove the J-clips. I have completed our box. I didn't show you 100% of me adding in the J-clips because it was very redundant. I've basically put them every 2 inches on here. So our floor is complete. If you were going to be making this cage for a doe, that you planned on breeding, you would need to add 4 inches of this same 1 inch by 1/2 inch wire. You could either tack it on right now, or you could have started with, 18 inches or however long you wanted this to be, and then only used the 1/2 inch by 1 inch for the wall. Usually when I'm doing this, I just tack it on because I like the stability of just having one piece as the wall. That makes me more comfortable, but that's just me. It's not to say that it's not completely functional. So now that we have our completed cube, this is literally just, Harvey, please don't. Why? Harvey's obsessed with cages. Every time I build cages, she's just like up my butt. Anyway, so I'm flipping this over because now, since we have our completed box, we need to add a door. So we've already cut out our door section. I will show you how I actually create the doors themselves. Gathering all my tools, you're gonna need the little door spring type guys. You just need 2 of those, and then the hog rings, and obviously if we're gonna cut a hole for the door, we need our metal snips. So let me see if I can get you positioned a bit better so that you can see how I am going to trim this out. All right, so we have our door section here, and we determined it was 16 by 19 inches, not including our hinges. These little things will be the hinges. Set that down. What you want to do in placing your door is you need to make sure that you are giving this space enough room for legitimate stability. Because if, like, the last thing you want to do is come too far down on your door and make it so that you're not, I mean, you need to maintain the structural integrity of the cage itself. So 4 inches up, 4 inches in is what I usually do to ensure that. So we're just going to count it because this is 1 by 1 inch wire. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you really wanted to make sure that it was going to be stable, you could go up 5. But for the sake of continuity in my other cages, I'm going to just keep it at 4 inches. So 4 inches up, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 inches in. So this needs to stay exactly the way it is. So we are not going to cut into this section at all. We are going to start our door with this block, basically. So I'm going to snip this just to mark my starting point. And again, you could save this wire and use it for something like a hay feeder or something like that. I actually really like using
this kind of thing in as hay feeders. This 1 inch by 1 inch works very well, I would say. Okay, so now I have got the other cage just for continuity's sake. Again, I would like all of the doors to open the same way. I have the other cage's door opening to the right. So this side is going to be the side where I place my hinge. And you want, as you're placing the door, you need at least one section of overlap. You don't want it to... The last thing you want is to have come this far and then make your door hole too big and then have to recut your door or something like that. So I would rather have this hole smaller than the door than larger, obviously. You don't want your bunnies hopping out on you. So we are going to overlap this, and because it is 16 squares high, it's going to be 14 squares. The hole itself is going to be 14 squares deep. So I'm going to go ahead and cut up 14. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is one of those things, like, I would rather measure twice and cut once, even though I just cut, 12 times. You understand what I mean. I would much rather it be not enough than too much in terms of the hole. So I'm actually going to only cut one more space in right here. And again with this, because this is the door opening, you really want to get as close as you can to that edge. And now we are going to go over. This part I don't enjoy, to be completely honest. It makes me a little bit nervous. I don't even know how well you can see this. I realize it's very difficult to see this wire. It's very thin. All right, we're gonna go over now. And I know this is the door is 19 inches, so I'm gonna go to like probably 16 and stop. So that's 1, 2, 3. And the last thing you want to do is get off. Hopefully you can see that bowing out now at this point. The last thing you want to do is start cutting on this line and then end up cutting on that line. I want to try and keep it straight. Okay. And the overlap, you're not going to overlap the hinge. The hinge is just going to wrap around this one wire. So you do need it overlapped at least 1 square on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut 2 more. Turn this over and get it tighter. And we're going to start cutting downward. I hope the amount of detail that I give you is not annoying. I am the sort of person who really appreciates detail and wants to understand exactly how someone has done something so that I can replicate it, or if they have made mistakes, what I can avoid. All right, there is our door hole. Da, da, da. Okay, now you are gonna want to be quite close. Otherwise you will not be able to see what on earth I am doing. And you may yet not be able to see what I'm doing. So we're gonna start, I like to place the bow, because this is still, it's just impossible to get these things 100% flat. So I am going to place the bowed side towards the interior of the cage, and I'm going to come along all of these extra spines and just twist them in using my needle nose pliers. I say that. I'm looking at this weld here. I'm thinking maybe it would be safer, because if I twist, I'm not sure how well you can see, because this wire is on this side, I would rather have
it turned around. I can bow it, I suppose, the other way, but if I twist the wire now that direction, it will be more stable because instead of pulling it against that weld, I'm now pulling it towards that weld, if that makes sense. So again, our aim is stability. So I'm just going to take my needle nose pliers, place this flat down, and just turn these so that they are perpendicular, because they are going to tuck into the wire on our cage. Sorry, I know it's difficult to see what I'm doing. I'm trying to make it so that you can kind of at least vaguely be aware. Now, because this is a hinge, we want it to be loose. We want to be able to swing the door easily. It's very, very annoying when you're going to check on rabbits and the door won't stay open. So I would rather have this more loose than tight while it's still being stable. Okay, everything is now bent perpendicular, more or less. And we are going to find where we need to place it here. So again, this wire where we are lining it up needs to be the exact wire that begins our hole. And then we are going to tuck in here and pull this towards me. So we're trying to loosely bring it around and just kind of loop it. It's actually, it's quite difficult to do, to be completely honest, from this angle. But as I said, you don't want it too tight. As we go, we can kind of try to maintain the looseness here. Hopefully you can at least kind of see that. I don't know. I'm trying so hard to actually give you something useful instead of making it more difficult. But if you kind of use the lip of the pliers like up against this wire, it leaves the appropriate amount of space. And I'm just holding this in place as I'm doing this. It is not attached to anything. Yeah, the tip of your pliers is actually going to create the perfect amount of space between the door and the main cage. So obviously it's not tacked across, but with me holding it in, you can tell that this is at least going to open. I am going to give these top guys just a little bit more room because I made them a bit too tight. Don't feel bad if you have to redo things. Please don't, because it's impossible to get everything perfect the first time. You are only human, unless you're something other than human. And then I'm very curious about why you're watching this video, and I would love to know more. Okay, so there's that. Tucked in, we'll open at least to here. But you want these so that you're not going to stab yourself, because right now they're jutted right out. Okay, you are now inside the cage. Congratulations, you're a rabbit. Okay, so you don't necessarily want these to be any tighter, but you do want them to be tucked in. So you kind of are going to go up that way. So it's more about it pointing up than it is about it coming in. So I've kind of pulled it in and then up, if that makes any sense at all. Now, I will tell you, this is tightening it a bit too much. There's not really a great way to do this. This is kind of one of those situations where you kind of just get to play with it. So we are playing away. Okay, so maybe it's tuck it in and then up. Yeah, it's easier to do from the bottom. Okay, and then up. And as we are working on our actual, whenever we come back to grind this down, we will soften these as well so that you're not cutting yourself every time you open the door, because nobody wants that. And you also want your rabbits to be protected, because they will, if they can find a way to chew this, they will chew on this. And you can kind of, you don't want to fool with this too much, because if you just put a ton of pressure on this, it's just going to snap all your welds. And that is not at all what we want. So I have made these too tight. Of course I have. I thought I had allowed myself enough space. I think maybe I pulled them in too far. Obviously, I pulled them in too far. So now we get to rethink things a bit. Da, da, da. Now, I will tell you, I have broken welds and I have broken wires. If you bend these too much, this is me telling myself this because I'm the one that's messed this up. If I bend these too much, they will just straight up break. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. All right. I'm going to give you guys a minute and I'm going to reassess. Okay, that was a very short minute, but I've remembered now. I just need to do this with the door open. So we're just tucking these metal pieces in, not tightly, but around so that they are not jutted out. And again, the nose of the pliers should be enough to allow for the necessary space. I say that, and here I am fooling with it. Don't allow my, I'm making this look more difficult than it actually is. It's really not that difficult. I'm good at making things look difficult. I probably shouldn't be trying to show you what I don't know what I'm doing. But I can promise you, I have made plenty of these actual cages in the past, and they have worked quite well. Don't know why, for some reason, I couldn't remember what I did with the door. But here we are. And last one. Tuck you in just a bit more. Okay. Now it's closing and opening just fine. And instead of pulling these back in, I'm going to tuck them down. Yeah, that's what I did last. See, it breaks. That just broke. So you want to do this carefully because you don't want to lose all of your hinges. But I guess if you were going to replace any part of the door, it would, or any part of this cage, replacing the door itself would be the easiest portion to replace. Yeah. And these are already fairly tight right here. Okay. And now we have our well-functioning door. Okay, so attaching the closures on the doors. So here's our door. And then here is our little hook guy. So I like to use the corners. So I know I want to attach it here. And I know that it will hit this corner well to latch. So what you're going to do, you are going to place your hog ring inside your hog ring closure tool. You're going to go ahead and place this little hook, the bottom hook on this spring, into the hog ring. And then you're just going to come in where you know you want it and attach it like that. There you go. Now it's in. And we're going to do the same thing with the second hog ring and second door closure. I like to have one on the bottom and one on the top. You can do 3. You could just do 1 if you wanted to. I really prefer 2. And this one, I have them turned around the wrong way. You want it so that that hook is going to face in, like towards your cage. And I like having a bit of overlap, but you don't necessarily want too much overlap. Okay. All right, back one. The bottom one. Bottom one goes right there. And we are finished with our cage, aside from grinding down all of the ugly, sharp edges. And as you can see, there are quite a few ugly, sharp edges that we will need to handle. And we will work on that. Honestly, we will probably work on that tomorrow morning because it is very hot outside right now. And the sun is going to be way too bright for you to even see what I'm doing. So I will see you again soon. You will see me again in a matter of seconds. All right, guys. So for this next part, I would highly recommend using some protection. I probably should be actually in fully closed shoes. These are like Croc flats. At this point, we are going to use our Dremel tool to grind down the edges of specifically the hole of our cage, because we're going to be coming in and out of this a lot, and these edges are currently very, very sharp. So this is just a little hobby Dremel 3000. I did get a different tip. This is actually like a carbide tip that is designed specifically for deburring. I haven't used this yet, so we're going to see how well it works. Okay.
I wanted to show you a little bit better how smooth you can actually get these. So for comparison, there's some that I've not ground down. You can see how how sharp that can be. It can be quite sharp, actually. I actually did hit that just a tad bit with the grinder. But this, I mean, you can run your finger over it and it just doesn't really catch. And that's exactly what you want for the edge of your cage. I've not finished up here yet. Those are still jutted out quite a bit, but I cut them as close as I could with the snips. Now, certainly this is going to take me a long time to do just with this tool. It's a lot quicker than the previous tip that I was using, but it's still going to be a good long while. And then considering that, if you have the means to do one of the actual I keep wanting to call it an angle grinder. If you had an angle grinder, this would be much, much faster and much easier. So I would highly suggest using one of those if it is at your disposal. If not, you're going to be like me, sitting here spending a whole lot of time just grinding down the edges. But it does work. So it's one of those, hey, if you're in a pinch and you don't have another option, it's worth a shot. This is what I've done on all of my other cages that are currently in the rabbitry. All my all-wire cages, I should say. So I can't tell you it works. All right, let me show you how to remove one of the J-clips. Okay, so this is how you would remove a J-clip that has been placed with your little plier tool, your J-clip applicator tool. So just a simple this one's already bent, like this one's been abused pretty good, but it works just fine for this. So you slide it in there. It's literally like in the hole where, like between the wire and the J-clip itself. And then you grab your hammer. It's a little tricky to hold this thing in place. You just tap until it goes through. And then you kind of cinch around. You want to be careful to not bend your wire. That can be the difficult part here, is bending the wire. If it's not coming out, try and hit it from the other side. I am bending my wire here. And you want to try to not get it into any of the others. And as in terms of, you don't want your awl stabbed into your other J-clips that you're not trying to remove. And you just honestly just kind of wiggle things back and forth. It's really tricky because at this point you're gonna kind of be bending your cage wire. So a larger awl would probably be more beneficial. There you go. And we have our removed J-clip. And that would be how you do it. All right, friends. That would be our completed cage, assuming you've actually finished out all of your edges and whatnot. So, if you have any questions, any comments, need any more assistance, I'm going to leave everything that I know in the description. All the links that I've used in the past. I can also link you to KW Cages if this process kind of is overwhelming. KW Cages actually sells prefabricated kits. You still have to like connect all the pieces together, but you don't have to worry about cutting the wire and measuring things. It's all pre-measured. Most of the difficult thought type of work in terms of measuring and planning is already done for you. Now, my plan is to hang these, and so soon I will be coming to you with an explanation of how we do that and actually show you what our finished product is looking like. I'm very excited about getting our rabbitry in better working order, and this is going to help keep things cleaner and give the rabbits more air circulation and just all kinds of really good stuff. So I'm really excited about it, and I cannot wait to show you guys. So thanks for coming along with me and learning how to actually build one of these guys. And yeah, this has been Sam again at Harvey Cat Homestead, and hope you have an absolutely beautiful day, my friends. Bye.